Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gaming Mix podcast. I am Jordan, as always. This is from analogstickgaming.com, of course, if you don't know, which is our website. And the founder of Analog Stick Gaming, Jeff, is to my left, as always. How are you, Jeff? Yes, we actually almost didn't record today because I had some sort of weird head cold last night. And I thought I was going to get a migraine. And then I woke up feeling fairly okay, so Jeff had a bit of a rush this morning to get ready. um, yes, maybe that's what it was. And we'll speak more about Embracer shortly, I think, because they have been in the news again. So why don't we get into the mix of things, Jeff? I know that we have a few news stories today, so where do you want to start? Okay. Some of the best indie games over the last few years, right? Yes. Yes. I wanna handle the layoff part first, just because we speak about layoffs all the time. We'll be speaking about layoffs forever on this podcast, I feel like. Um but who was it? Oh wow. Oh wow. Yeah. And they've laid off effectively 28 staff, you said, but 18 are immediate and 10 are after the current project is finished. Yeah. That does, yeah. That does sound. Yeah, that almost sounds like we're going to lay those of you off that we don't need to stay around to finish this project. We're then going to finish the project and shut the studio. That is what it sounds like. The only thing that I can think is that those 10 people who aren't immediately being cut will potentially move to another studio that has ties. Do you know what I mean? Like, Yeah, precisely. Yeah. Seems strange. It's very, very strange. And then as for the CEO part of it, I'm not really sure what to make of it. What do you have on that one, Jeff? Yeah. Yeah. However, those have been good years. Yeah. That's very true. Yeah. That is very true. Yeah. I think that, you know, the only thing I can really say on it, as you mentioned there, the thing about a CEO changing is that a CEO changing does change the complete direction of a company, because they will have different goals, they will have different ways of reaching the same goals, and it sort of makes me think of, like, we know that Jim Ryan is leaving PlayStation very, very soon. I think his last day is coming up in March at some point, and whoever takes over there is going to change the direction of that brand, right? We just saw. Do I think? Oh, do I think it's Herman? Yeah, maybe, maybe. But then, but then I also wonder whether part of that though is they didn't want Jim on it because they know Jim's going. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like the impression I get is that Jim is actually effectively out of the door already, because they've had his goodbye party, like we've seen that. They've given him his gifts. I feel like maybe he's just staying on the books to get to a certain point of employment. Oh my god. But it's kind of like Mike Ybarra, right? Leaving Blizzard. And they actually, I can't remember the lady's name, so maybe you can have a quick look at this, Jeff. But they did actually announce this week who is taking over as the leader of Blizzard. And I believe, I can't remember the lady's name, but she was in charge of Call of Duty. Yes, yeah. So that kind of makes sense to me, because at the end of the day, she's led Call of Duty very successfully in a business sense, right? She's she's done very good business with that brand. It makes a lot of money. So yeah, I think that, a CEO changing, what I would say from a staff point of view, is probably always a slightly scary thing, because I know that when I've worked in places and leadership's changed and things like that, those people might come in and say, "Do you know what? We don't actually need this team anymore. We don't want to do it." It's kind of like, I'll use Sony as the example and PlayStation as the example. For all we know, the new CEO could come in at PlayStation and be like, "Okay, every single one of these live service games is cancelled." Do you know what I mean? They could say that's not our direction anymore. They're all cancelled, and that would lead to people losing their jobs. Potentially, it would lead to some people losing their passion. Because mm, yes, yes, almost immediately, right? Yes, and that's what I mean. That's the unknown part right now. Is we don't know until we see who's going to take over, and we understand some of their business practices, if you will. We don't know how this is going to go. Right? It would is again. I go back to Sony and PlayStation because that's the big one that's going to be changing in the recent future, and it's like yeah. But Xbox is also a weird one, right? Because that was a structural change. So I feel like although there was a change there, ultimately Phil is still the guy, right? Phil is still the ultimate boss. It's just that he's not running the day-to-day stuff. But I look at something like PlayStation, and can you imagine, and I'm not saying this would happen, I'm just doing it for the sake of conversation, but can you imagine if somebody like Reggie, from who was previously at Nintendo, took over PlayStation? Like the direction of that company would be entirely different. And that's why I'm saying that until we see it, until we see these things play out, we have no idea. All that we do know is that when you have a change at that level of leadership of a company, things will change. Whether they are for good or bad remains to be seen. Yeah. 7 million on Xbox, just to be clear. Yeah. And I I also want to say, well, I have a few things to say on this whole story, but what I want to say about that legal part of it for a minute is at the very most, I think all that's going to happen is they might be asked to redesign a couple of the pals, and I think that will be it. Like, I don't see. Like, this game isn't going to be taken down. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not a Pokemon game. It's a very different game that is using. I think that if I think that I think that if it was literally a Pokemon game with the really similar designs as well, then they'd have much more of an issue. But because it's such a different type of game, I don't think it's a problem in any way, personally. And all of the kind of legal experts that I follow and tune into seem to be on that same wavelength that it's very unlikely that anything will come of this situation. Yeah. Yes, for sure. Um yes. Yeah. I want to say one thing on this. Um, Obviously we've seen that this is apparently the biggest third party launch on Game Pass for Xbox. I think that's massive, and I think, but there is one thing that sticks out to me. I don't think they thought this game was going to be as much of a success as it is, and I think that that's why they probably weren't really supporting them much to start with, and now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, have our resources. Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other thing that I like about this is that I think there's still a lot of questions from people about what a successful game on Game Pass looks like, right? Because we know that Game Pass to some degree does impact sales of video games. But I think that at we've now got to the point where at the end of the day, success on Game Pass is to do with player count of the game. And the more people that are engaging with it, you can essentially figure out that the more people that are engaging with it and the longer they are engaging with it for, then the better the game has done and the more money Xbox is making as a result of that game. Yeah. And also, I guarantee you as well that not every single 7 million players who played on Xbox or Game Pass on PC are people, like, some of those people would have bought the game. So this game has more than 12 million cells. Like, it hasn't. Yeah, okay, you can make the argument of if it wasn't on Game Pass, maybe it would have sold 3 or 4 million more instead of 1 or 2 million more, right? But realistically, losing a little bit of cells for the level of exposure that Game Pass gives you is probably worth it to most games. Um, this is like Power World is going to be one of the biggest hits, if not the biggest hit of the year. To have this number of players in this amount of time to sell as well as it is, like, this is an indie game, right? Isn't it? Are they self-publishing this? So, so this is an indie game. I don't remember the last time a fully indie game in this way has done this well this quickly. Maybe you have an idea, Jeff, but yeah. The only one I could think of, which is no longer really indie game, but was at the time when it first came around, would have been PUBG, right? Like, that was a small game, and like and that was massively successful. But again, even that became more successful over time. It wasn't like immediately. Like, that game had been out for months before it really exploded. This game literally exploded in a week. Like, I don't know, it's incredible, and I have to give it to them because what they've made isn't a perfect game, but it's a fun game that people are enjoying. And ultimately, that's what matters most, right? So, this is amazing to see. Yes, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And yeah. And the other thing as well that I just want to say before we move on to the next news story is that I think what's good about this one and what's good about Xbox specifically releasing the player number is that it now gives people a measuring stick of like, okay, this is the most successful third party game. So when we see a game on Game Pass like a Forza Horizon 5 that had 30 million players, now we know that actually that's a massive success. Or when we see Starfield had 13 million players, we know that around 3 million of those copies sold on Steam, we can also see that that game was a success. I think that having those numbers out there gives people a measuring stick, which now allows people to make more fair comparisons over what is successful on Game Pass. Because I think the problem up to this point has been that people are trying to compare Game Pass to traditional sales, and it doesn't really work that way. Like, let's say that Starfield sold 50% of its copies, right? So let's say that they sold 6 million copies. Like, that's pretty successful whether a game is on Game Pass or not. So for it to be on a service and still sell potentially that many or even more potentially, it's like, yeah, I think, there's a lot of questions over Game Pass and subscription services, and I understand where those questions come from because we never get quite enough information publicly to actually really understand what a success means on something like Game Pass. But I'm just glad that there's now that measuring stick, because it's like, I remember when Forza Horizon 5 came out, and when they got to 30 million players, like 3 or 4 months after launch, everyone was kind of like, yeah, but it's on Game Pass. And it's like, yeah, but how many games, whether they're on Game Pass or not, ever have 30 million players? It's... Yeah. And so I'm glad that more numbers are getting out there now, and I'm glad to see Power World being this massive success. I actually think it will be a bigger success over time as the game improves. Wow, that's gonna be something if that happens. Yeah. Well, that's what I was gonna say. Once the Xbox version gets closer to that Steam version, it's gonna explode on console, I would imagine. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like there was another one recently last year, wasn't there? To a different level, but I remember that the Lies of P developer was saying that how Game Pass was really, really helpful to them, and actually massively helped the game gain a lot of exposure. And I think that one thing that is really hard, not to go on too much of a tangent here, but one thing that people find so difficult about Game Pass is it seems to be that people can't wrap their head around the fact that Game Pass actually leads to more people buying the game in some cases. Because, yeah, yeah, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, what more news do we have, Jeff? That's crazy. So it's so I don't know about previous games, but I do know that this game has sold 1 million copies already at time of recording, and it's been out for just over a week now. So so it's interesting because these games, what it made me realize is these games in this series, for as successful and as popular as they actually don't sell as many copies as you might expect. Because, mm, yeah, yeah. And this is exactly why I always say as well, people don't understand that once you've hit 1 million cells, in my mind, you're a successful game. Because there are literally thousands of games that never get to 1 million cells. Do you know what I mean? It's just like it's like I saw, and this one actually does make me slightly sad, but I saw recently that obviously Prince of Persia hasn't sold very many copies, right? And it's like, yeah, but yeah, absolutely. And it's like, and they haven't been doing well on sales. But the interesting thing about that one is it's in a genre that is beloved but also somewhat niche, right? Um, I wouldn't have expected this game to sell 5-6 million copies. Do you know what I mean? So it's that thing of like, I think that there's two there's two ways of looking at the gaming industry. And there is the business way, which is we want to sell as many copies as possible, and when we sell 4 or 5 million copies of a game and we're actually in profit, that isn't good enough. And that often happens for companies like Square Enix. Ubisoft have fallen into that in a few cases. I think the previous Mario plus Rabbids game, kind of, they said that didn't meet their expectations, but then it sounds like that still sold like 3 or 4 million copies. So wow, wow, nice. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. But yeah, it's really interesting to look at the Yakuza Like a Dragon series and see that, like, 1 million cells is a milestone for them, because it puts it into perspective of, like, these games, for as popular as they are for the people that play them, like, there's nobody that plays these games that I know who doesn't like them. Like, if you like these games, you're probably gonna like every single one of these games. Yeah. Hmm. We're very different. Yeah. Mm. So I'm really happy for them. I will talk more about the game later on. As for the score, I won't talk about what my score is going to be because I'm now reviewing the game for us. We've had a bit of a change there. Um, yeah, and with me, one thing I will say is I'm now 50 hours into the game, so I'm much further, and it just makes more sense. But for it to get that perfect 40 score, and for it to be the 30th game in God knows how many years to do that, that is an impressive thing. One thing I will say from people who are a bit older than me, who kind of used to treat Famitsu like gods, almost, if you like, in terms of when they would give their scores out. One thing I have heard is that they have become a little bit more common with those kind of perfect 40 scores, and they tend to always go to Japanese based games. And I'm not trying to take away anything from Infinite Wealth, because it's a fantastic game. But I just wonder whether, in the same way that Edge, for example, yes. Yeah. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't think that perfect 40 from Famitsu is held in the same regard as it would have been 15 years ago, for example. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. And if I can make a quick point without going on a big tangent, um I think that one of the things we've seen over the last number of years now, right, is that there are many there are many games that are scoring much higher consistently. And I think some people have said that's just because, critics are kind of rating things higher and whatever, just because. And it's like, no, I actually think the overall quality of games has gone up. And I think the problem is people forget, because technology doesn't jump as quickly now, so you don't notice it as much as you would have back in the PS2 generation kind of thing. What happens is newer games on certain aspects of games will always be better than older games. So they're kind of starting from a certain point of, like, they're starting higher up that score ladder, if that makes sense. Because, yeah, yeah, precisely. And that's not me taking away anything from any game. I'm just trying to put into perspective that we've got to this point where the vast majority of games are very good nowadays, quite frankly. Like, in terms of the games that most people. Really? Is there? Jesus. I mean, I thought that it was going to slow down a bit this year after last year, but, I'm interested to see what the next, and maybe we should put a little bet on this, Jeff. Maybe because we want to do some Metacritic bets here and there, and we actually like Open Critic as well. I'm interested to see what the next 90 or 90 plus game is this year, because we've obviously had Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth has a 90. We've got Tekken 8 came out on the same day, also has a 90. I'm interested to see what the next game will be, which is going to get that score or higher than that score. We'll figure that out as we because actually this is a good time to say um yeah, maybe it will be, but as we move forward a few episodes here, our next episode will be a normal episode with news and stuff, and then next weekend at time of recording this episode, we're gonna have to record an episode in advance because I'm actually away on our normal recording day. So we will probably have one episode where we have no news, and it will be more of a thematic based. We'll think of a topic and we will kind of discuss it at length. So maybe that will be our topic, is guessing the Metacritic scores for the biggest releases of the year. If that's something you'd like to see, put a like on this episode and leave a comment. Let us know. Yeah, yeah. This is crazy because again, this kind of makes me think of the Microsoft news from last week, right, with the layoffs. It's like these companies, smaller companies, I can understand it, and business wise, I can understand it. Okay, but these big companies that are literally making millions, if not billions, in profit per year have no reason to ever lay off any staff unless the only reason that I'd ever find acceptable, but you would never ever have this percentage of staff being laid off for that reason, is if it's a performance based issue, right? Like if you have staff members that are not living up to expectations, then obviously they're not going to keep their job. However, this isn't that. This is greedy people trying to basically make more profit than they're already making by cutting some people's jobs. Yes. And also the other thing is they announced all of these games and they actually said and more as well. So we don't even know how many games Sega's making right now. Like they have many more than they've actually announced. They're just kind of spacing out those announcements. Um, yeah, this is really annoying, and quite frankly, Jeff, I've said this to you for a few weeks now, but I'm actually getting fed up of every week us having to come on this show and talk about crap like people losing their jobs. Do you know what I mean? Especially in an industry which is one of the biggest industries in the world and makes a ton of money every year. Like it's just it's not acceptable from a human standpoint. From a what is right standpoint, it's not acceptable. Like it just isn't. This one's sad. This one hurt me. Yeah. Yeah, it did. Uh, Unless it was a Deus Ex game with a different character, right? Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm 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 very, very angry, Jeff. Like, I'm very angry about this piece of news. And I'm sure that when you saw this piece of news specifically, you knew I would be angry. Because every time we've spoken about Embracer, what have I said? I've brought up Eidos and Crystal and Gearbox. And I'm imploring people at Embracer now because it is going to get dangerous for them if it keeps going this way. Like, something is going to happen. People are going to be outside of their head offices with pitchforks. Do you know what I mean? I'm imploring you people, if any of you listen to this, please, please, if you have no intention of using these great teams that make great games and are almost guaranteed successes, because that's those three teams I just mentioned, that's kind of the land that they live in video games. If you have no intention of supporting them to make the great things they can make, please sell them or let somebody else support them to do so. Do not make cuts. You don't need to. You're like, I get that you've just lost out on this big massive deal. What can you do then? Sell some of these things that you own, because otherwise you're going to end up in a situation where none of it is worth anything anyway. Because you're just tearing apart these things right now and gutting these organizations, closing them down, firing God knows how many people at this point. And quite frankly, I've had enough. I've had enough of Embracer and what you have been doing. I actually really love a lot of the things that you have released over the years, but I'm getting to the point where I almost don't want to support any project that you are part of just through the principle of what's going on right now. Like, yeah, yeah, yes. Hmm. A beloved franchise. I'm not. Do you know what this made me think though, Jeff? It made me think, what's next? They're gonna cancel Tomb Raider? Is that what's gonna happen? And I actually think that game is probably more safe because it sounds like Amazon's involved on that one. Yeah. I don't think it is, but we're getting to that point of like, I just don't trust anything that Embracer is doing now, because what is like is all to me it almost seems like they're either slimming themselves down as much as possible to try and become more attractive to a buyer because they're going to try and sell off a lot of this stuff, or they're slimming themselves down to basically close down. And I don't know. Like, it's very weird, because I can guarantee you now that if you made a phone call today and you said to any company in gaming, oh yeah, IDOS is up for sale, and Crystal's up for sale, and Gearbox is up for sale, all three of those would be sold within a week. Like, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think so. And it's just, I'm really, really sad about all of this stuff. Like, they must have, there must be literally thousands of people who have now lost their jobs just because of this one group, you know? Just because of this one company. And it's such a shame. No, yeah, yeah. And and the other thing is, I think that the issue with Embracer is they're going to cause issues for everybody else, because there's now going to be that dark cloud over any acquisition made by anyone ever, because people are going to think of, oh, but look what Embracer did when they acquired all this stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Do we have any more news? Because if not, I do have a small piece of news to announce, which kind of has been breaking while we're recording here, and it's only a small bit of news. Okay, so Lightyear Frontier, which you may remember is a game that's coming to Xbox and Game Pass, has its release date now of March 19th. That's been announced today. That's the robot mech kind of farming ish game. Yeah. So that's coming out on March 19th, and a free demo is available today on the series consoles and PC. So so there you go. There's a bit of news for you on that one. But we have two more stories left, you said, Jeff. So what do we have? Yeah. I do have one quick question for you though, Jeff. And we can talk more about it later, but what I want to know, as a casual fighting game fan who enjoys every fighting game to varying degrees, is Tekken 8 worth buying? Okay, that's good to know. I'm very pleased to see this bit of news for them, because, that's cool. And also, one thing I have become quite aware of is apparently fighting games are one of the few genres that still do very well at physical sales. Um, which is strange to me because I don't really know why. Doesn't make sense, but a massive success, and congratulations to the Tekken team, because I always love to see a beloved franchise like that return with a big success. So congratulations. Yes. Oh. Can I just say something? He is never going to pay them that money. Like, they're never going to get that 4 million or whatever from him ever. It's never going to happen. So I have a very serious question for a minute. Why give someone a punishment that you know they can never fulfill? Like, yeah, no, yeah, yeah. And therefore, if he ever buys a house or anything when he passes away, they probably get a lot of money from that. From that. That's true. That's true. I do wonder what percentage, because there must be some sort of agreement. I'd love to know, just out of intrigue, what kind of percentage of the money that he earns he actually has to pay them. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, there's that. But let's get into some good news for once, Jeff, which is our main topic, which is the PlayStation State of Play. I know you have a write up over there, so why don't you take us through it? Yeah, and and it was almost like we've got the one that we know everybody really wants. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I've I was saying to a friend of mine that I have no issue with a game being announced really early, right? Like Cyberpunk was announced early, but it was already in development in some way at that time. Blade, similar kind of situation. But why announce a game literally at least a year before it even starts development? Like, that is weird. I've never seen that before. Yeah, yeah, yeah. hmm I feel like it is. Yeah, I feel like it is because Xbox just had the big moment at the Game Awards with Kojima, right? And it's like, oh, Kojima all of a sudden is really connected in people's minds to Xbox because his next big thing, his successor to whatever his Silent Hill game was going to be, is clearly what OD is. There's so much evidence of that. And it's like, that's something people have literally wanted for years. And then all of a sudden, PlayStation go, yeah, but we've got the thing you really, really want, which is Kojima returning to a Metal Gear style game. But it's not coming for a long time yet. Weird. Yeah. Yes. Uh. Okay. So, uh, I have quite a lot to say on this game. So bear with me because for those who know me, they know that I think Death Stranding was Kojima's best game. Um, I actually thought it was so good that I'm still not convinced it needs a sequel because I think it stood up really well as this unique thing that kind of did something very different and set itself apart, right? This game, this game, Death Stranding 2, there's a couple of things I picked up on in the trailer which I think suggest the game is going to be quite different. And one of those things is there was a moment with Troy Baker's character, who I'm forgetting the name of right now, so I apologize for that. But there's a moment with his character where he says to Sam Bridges, Norman Reedus, "Oh, you've given up the rope this time, and you've got a stick or something, right?" And he's obviously carrying a gun, and obviously the first game, Kojima always was talking about the rope being part of the gameplay experience and what that rope signified, which was basically traversal and moving around and all that kind of stuff and connecting each other. And that, to me, that one line of dialogue kind of said, okay, there's going to be a lot more action in this game. It's not necessarily going to be Metal Gear in a weird world, but there's going to be a focus on a lot more action, I think. Because why have that line otherwise? Why make that point of showing that line of, to me that was them trying to say the game is going to be very different without actually showing it yet, because all of the gameplay parts they did show looked very similar to the previous game, although lots of different biomes this time, which I liked. Um, and then there's that weird little puppet man. I don't, like, blatantly looks like Alan Wake. He looks like Alan Wake. Um, so I have no idea. Yeah, that would be cool. So I have no idea what's going on story wise. Obviously Sam Bridges looks a lot older, but we know that they age in this game because of the Timefall rain and everything, like in this universe. So he might not actually be that much older, so we have no idea how long after the first game this is actually set. It seems like Is that the same baby? That's my question. Because okay, okay, maybe, yeah, maybe. I don't know, but it does sound like he left his original work organization, whatever they were called. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. Um, and he's joined the company that Fragile works for, and they basically go to different regions and try and connect them. But I like the kind of messaging in this trailer of was connecting the wrong thing to do, because I think Kojima likes to do a lot of social commentary, right? And and to me that strikes me as him kind of saying like, is AI the right thing? Was having the internet and doing all these things the right thing? Do you know what I mean? It feels like Kojima trying to provoke this conversation, which is when I think it's him at his best. I will be playing this game. I'm down already to review this game for Outer Haven, so so there's that. Um yeah. Yeah. It's I'm interested. I'm really interested to see how they improve this game, because I think for a lot of people who played it, they liked it, but they felt like there wasn't enough variety in the gameplay. So I'm interested to see if they add more variety in terms of what you're actually doing, or whether they do stick to their guns and you're mostly just delivering stuff again. It's going to be interesting to see. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Interesting. I'm not a huge fan of his. I'm certainly not a huge fan. Oh wow. Oh wow. Okay, that's yeah, that's not good. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. That's why I stopped watching it. I did actually enjoy it to start with, and then it was just like, okay, this is just the same thing over and over and over again. I am intrigued to see what other celebrities might make their way into this game though, because obviously we know of a few, but Kojima loves his celebrities, and I actually think a lot of them who kind of a lot of the people who were involved last time, they were little cameos, but they were nice little kind of appearances that were a bit fun to see, and and then there was that, I forget the actor's name, but he played Die Hardman, I think, and he had that really like emotional scene towards the end of the game where he takes his mask off. I think it's Tommy Earl Jenkins is the actor's name, possibly, but he was like incredible in the game. Like his performance was really really strong. I actually think I actually think he massively outshone Norman Reedus. Like he, Mm. Yeah. Yes, yeah. And I did really like Mads Mikkelsen in it as well, but I don't think he'll be returning. Yeah, he's just like, what the hell? It would be funny if he saw you again and was like, "Oh, you're the dry bones guy." Oh wow, that is so funny. That's so funny. Oh god. So, uh, yeah, this game doesn't exist to me because of that. It like uh, it's the first time ever that I know of where a game has actually been publicly announced as available for a platform and then taken away. Like, I don't think we've ever had that before. And I know, to Sony's credit, I know that they effectively saved this game because it was going to be cancelled otherwise, is my understanding. Um, but yeah, it's such a shame because this game does look really cool. Yes. Yeah. For me, yeah. Yeah. So for me, I'm definitely interested in this game. I don't think I will buy it just because. Did this one get a release date? I can't remember. Okay. I feel like I'll be playing too many things around that time. So we'll see. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And it's going to be on PlayStation Plus at some point. That's the other thing. Like this game will be on PlayStation Plus at some point in the future. Nice. Yeah. It's basically a demo, right? So this I'm actually much more excited for. I do think it looks okay. I'm not, I need to actually get hands on with it and see. No. Yeah. However, I'm still convinced that if anyone can get it right, it is them. Because their entire inspiration for so much of what they do is that game. Yeah, yeah. That's the problem. Yeah, this one leaked. This one did leak. Okay. What? And The Last of Us. Oh, I'm not sure. What does it have in common with those games? That makes sense. Yeah, I forgot they were making the Until Dawn movie. Mm. I I also think to give, and I'm somewhat negative on this, but I also understand it. I actually think that a lot of the reason that many of these remakes also exist is because Sony are in this weird place with their first party development and they're trying to fill gaps. And I think that you can remake or re release things a lot more quickly than you can make a brand new thing, right? I think part of that is the reason that we saw Last of Us Part 2 get its re release on PS5 because they need to fill gaps. Like, this so far, and we'll talk about it when we finish kind of going through the state of play, but I have seen some people criticizing Sony for the fact that this year, yet again, looks like another year where they might have not really very many first party games at all. You know, and they had one last year and it was fantastic, but that was one game. And I think that for lots of people, especially those that like the exclusives, one a year isn't good enough from any of these companies. Um, and as we see here, like, okay, some of these games are exclusive, but I don't think they showed any first party games, right? Other than you could argue that Death Stranding 2 is a first party game because they own the IP, but they don't own Kojima Productions. Because they're publishing it. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'd like to see if those actors are going to be in the movie. That's what I want to see. That's true. That's true. Yeah. That would be cool. That would be cool if they did something like that when they release it onto like streaming services and stuff. That would be cool. Yeah. Yes. Yes, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll be honest, I actually wasn't that impressed. I wasn't as impressed as I expected to be. Yeah, 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 yeah. Can I can I add a little bit of news here because it's related somewhat to Sonic, as you mentioned just now. This is more entertainment news, but once again, we are the Gaming Mix podcast. There's a reason for that. Um, so we've had the announcement. Well, as reported by Variety, Jim Carrey will be returning for Sonic 3. After he was expected not to return, he will be returning. He is the best part of those movies. I am very glad. I have, yes. Yeah. That's cool. Nice, nice. I have a little bit of trivia for you then, Jeff. Which video game character is played by Robotnik's sidekick in the movies? So the person who plays his sidekick in the movies plays which video game character? No, he plays a video game character in another video game series. Who is that character? He plays he plays Basim from Assassin's Creed Mirage. Yeah, so Agent Stone is his name in the Sonic movies, and yeah, he is the voice actor for Basim. So there you go. I will say when I saw this, I thought, oh, maybe I'll get a VR for this. Like, it did look really good. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Ghost of Tsushima. So I'm not going to comment too much on this game. I can't even say why, which is a weird situation. Um, but but what I will say is that if you've played games made by this team before, you still will have that kind of game. They're just doing some very different things as well. Interesting. Interesting. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'll get one and you can get the other. That- yeah. And actually, by the time you're seeing this episode, you might have already seen that state of play because I believe it's on February the 6th. Is that state of play? I don't need to see more of this game personally. I know that I'm going to play it. Like, I don't need to see any more of it. Again, like you said, it comes down to contracts, right? They are contracted to market this game a certain amount, and this is fulfilling that goal. Um, and also, I think it does help from their perspective that this is a big exclusive for them. Like, there's a reason that they don't let go of these Final Fantasy VII Remake games in terms of exclusivity, and they keep renewing and keep renewing it. Is because these games. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see if it does. That's true. That's true. I'll be interested to see. But yeah, I personally don't need to see more of this game. I don't know how you feel, Jeff. Fair enough. Yeah. And we've also had other news stories recently, so check out some of the ones I've wrote. Uh, but yeah, I um I want to do a quick summary of this state of play. I personally thought it was a very good show. I can understand the criticism of it from the standpoint of being a fan of PlayStation and a fan of their first party output for a long time now. I can understand that people are now getting frustrated about how quiet they've been about what these first party studios are doing, right? But I also think that's exactly the reason that they called this one State of Play and not a PlayStation Showcase. Because I think that last year they made the mistake of having a show like this, which they called a PlayStation Showcase, and then everybody sort of went, well, most of this stuff isn't first party, and we only really want to see first party stuff at a PlayStation Showcase. And that's why I think that this was branded as a State of Play instead. I personally think that when you take a step back from the need for more information about what their first party is doing, and I do think it's got to that point where they have to, like, if the next show they do doesn't give more first party information, I think people are going to start getting really frustrated. But yeah, I'd expect so. No, but what about Sucker Punch? What about the Days Gone developer? I know they've obviously changed significantly, but they are working on a new IP, right? Um no, what were they called? Oh god. Oh god. Oh, I can't. Yeah, Sony Bend. There you go. What about them? You know, like that game has been worked on for at least 3 years now. Absolutely, but I don't think it's just about major hissers, right? I think it's about first party. Yeah. No, that's true, but I think that it's got to the point where things are so quiet that people just want to know what first party's doing at this point. Because I think people are getting a bit nervous. Live service games. Maybe, I don't know. I think that maybe Bend was doing a live service game and it got cancelled. That's my assumption. Um what I would say is I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Ghost of Tsushima 2 this year, as in be announced, not necessarily released this year, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it announced, especially because they've announced the movie being made as well. I think yeah, but this is the thing, like yeah. I agree. I agree. No, no. If you've got an actual actor playing the part, they should be the one who's in the movie. Like, yeah. But I think that people just want to see what is going on with first party. We know that obviously Naughty Dog now probably won't have anything to show for a good few years because one of their projects got cancelled. We know that Santa Monica has been working on another project alongside whatever, like they did God of War Ragnarok, but they have been working on another game. So could that be ready to show this year potentially? I'm not sure. Like I keep saying to people that I think that what you have to remember is PlayStation first party just had 5 games cancelled, right? Like 5 of their live service games got cancelled. We know that one of those was the Last of Us multiplayer game. It's kind of like when you have five games get cancelled and you own, I believe, 23 or 24 studios PlayStation has, that means that a quarter of your studios pretty much have had games cancelled. So they're back to the Yeah, so they're back to the start. So they're not going to have anything for years now. And then you've got other studios like Insomniac who have just released what, like 3 games in 3 years or something. You know, they need a bit of a break. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, they're booked up for years. Like they're booked up for years. Like I said, Sucker Punch, yes, they've been quiet, and I think it is time for them to show something. Um, again, Santa Monica, potentially whatever their second project was. But we, again, with that Santa Monica second project, we don't know if it was one of those live service games. That's the thing, we don't know. And I can understand people's frustration, but the reality is every single company goes through this period where it's almost like the pipeline of production gets blocked up. That's the way I would describe it, right? It gets blocked up because things get moved around and they get in the way of other things, and other stuff gets cancelled, and directions change, studios get closed, other studios get bought. Like, I think there's been a lot of change at PlayStation over the last 3 to 4 years. And I think that just means that some of the stuff they were trying to do didn't pan out, and they're going through a little bit of a dry spell. But they're kind of they're filling those gaps with third party and second party stuff. So at least they still have things for you to play. Like, there's no shortage of video games. It's not. I understand the importance of exclusives, especially to the PlayStation brand that have, been so consistent for 10 years. But I'll give you an example, and I'm not saying that this is where PlayStation is, because it's different circumstances. But Xbox had really strong exclusives for about 10 years, and then they fell off a cliff. Do you know what I mean? Like, every single brand, yeah. But every single brand will have a period of time where their first party just doesn't isn't you can't keep up that cadence forever. Some of these studios need a break at some point. And yeah, I just give them time. I do think we'll hear about a few more things this year, and I do agree with people that if we have another I think that the danger for PlayStation is if they have another quiet year on the first party front this year, and they don't even announce anything really coming up that we don't already know about. Like, Wolverine doesn't count because we've known about Wolverine for a long time. I think if they don't announce something like a Ghost of Tsushima 2, they are then going to be in the situation where fans are really going to start to get frustrated with them, because I saw people when this State of Play got announced, people were really excited because the feeling was it's time for you to talk. The problem is it's been time for PlayStation to talk for like the last 18 months, and they haven't really said what people want them to say, right? And I just think just give them time. They're going through a transitional period, and that's okay. But these teams will be back delivering great games when they have something to show. That's all I'd say. So, let's move on to a nice section about what we've been playing. Because you, Jeff, as you mentioned earlier, have been playing Tekken 8. So tell me about Tekken 8. How is it? I haven't I haven't played Tekken since like Tekken 4. So oh wow, okay. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Good. That's kind of what Tekken is. Yeah. That's oh interesting. Okay. Yeah. Nice. Nice. Okay. I wasn't expecting that. That's really good to hear. Fair. Fair. Something that I'm not 100% sure is good, although some people think it is, seemingly, and you have played a small bit of, is Suicide Squad, I believe. So, do you have any thoughts on that? Deadshot. Interesting. Mm. Yeah, so I have actually seen some of that, and I have to say it was amazing to see. Okay. Nice. Nice. So I will say that's the one unanimous good thing I have heard about the game. Everybody says the story is good. So that is kind of what's intrigued me more to play it, because I don't think the gameplay looks bad by any means, but yeah. No, I don't. I don't think that's a high bar either. Um, yeah. I I still think I still think the biggest problem with the Avengers game is the fact that you can see, even in that game, you can see that Crystal wanted to make a different game. Like, as in, they wanted to make an Avengers game. Yeah, yeah. So that's a big shame. I do hope Suicide Squad does better. I think that everything I've kind of seen so far has interested me more than I was previously. And critically, it seems to be quite mixed, but it seems to be literally this game is not very good at all, or actually, this game is way better than I expected. That sort of seems to be the split on it. Oh, interesting. Oh, wow, really? Wow, that's different. We don't often see companies do things like that, so good on them. Nice. Nice. Fantastic. Um so now it's time for me. And I have mostly been playing one thing, as you can imagine, which is Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I believe that last time I spoke about it, I was around 35 hours into the game, something like that. I'm now about 50 hours into the game, and I love this game. Like, I'm not going to say what my score is at the moment because I'm going to have a full review obviously now, but I love this game. It makes so many smart changes. One of the things I didn't talk about in combat for last week was when you are controlling Kiryu, you can actually change his style. So his combat, to the point that I am in the game, is turn-based. I know that you can eventually get a particular skill which allows him to, for a brief time, go back to the action-based gameplay. But what I like even in his turn-based gameplay is you have the 3 different styles. So he can change from like rush, which allows him to do quick attacks, and it actually allows him to attack. If you're only doing a basic attack, it allows him to attack twice in a row. So it's good for finishing off kind of multiple enemies. If you've got 2 enemies that are close to dying, for example, you can switch to that and attack 2 of these enemies. You have one of his styles which is more kind of like for focusing on a single enemy and quite powerful. And then another one of his styles is about breaking defenses. So you use them all strategically. And he is the only one that I've seen that can actually break the guard of people. So like certain enemies will be guarding, and he is the only one that seems to have a skill that can break the guard of those people. So he's quite a crucial person to use at certain times. So I really like all of that. And then obviously, and then there's the Sujimon stuff, which I spoke about a bit last time, which is the Pokemon style stuff. What I didn't realize at the time is there's actually a full storyline connected to that mode. Like, it has an actual story, and I've now finished that story, and it's quite deep. Like, it's much deeper than it first appears. I really enjoyed it. It probably took around 20 hours of me kind of focusing on that mode to finish that story thread. But I suspect it can be done quicker, and I also suspect that for a lot of people it will actually take longer, because the way that this mode works is you get tickets, and then you basically go to a gumball machine to get other Sujimon, but you can also capture them out on the street, right? And I got quite lucky in the sense of I'm using these tickets in this gumball machine, and I got like 3 legendary Sujimon out of it just on random rolls. So then it was like, oh, okay, now I can beat everything as long as I keep leveling up these Sujimon. And then I got to Dondoko Island, which of course is the Animal Crossing style thing, but it's so much more than that. And what they've done is really clever, because it is Animal Crossing and it's quite chill. And like I said, you can, I said previously, you do this kind of, you're walking around with your bat and you're using your bat to clear out rubbish, chop down trees, all this kind of stuff, right? And there's these pirates that are basically dumping rubbish on the island. Once you clear out these areas, you can eventually pay to have them permanently cleared when you've got enough currency in the particular mode. And then you can start building on them. And that's where it becomes something that isn't Animal Crossing anymore. Because what happens is, it becomes almost like a business management style sim, where you are inviting tourists to come and visit your island, and based on other buildings and things you have placed on your island, it will attract different types of people, and the different levels of people you attract will spend different amounts of money, right? So it's your way of making money in this game, and I'm up to a 4-star island out of 5, so I've done 75% of the mode, if you will. I'm again, it has a story attached to it. Like, there's actually a storyline with these pirates that plays out as you improve your island and unlock new buildings. You increase your building level, which unlocks new buildings as well. You go and catch fish and all this kind of stuff. And as you catch these things, the more of them you catch, the more rewards you get for it as well. And then you can obviously do up your own house. And doing up your house and placing items in your house actually gives you more life in this mode, because you are going and fighting these pirate rubbish men, basically, to make sure that they're not harassing your tourists at different times. And then there's this other part of it, which is quite clever, and that is Dondoko Farm, which is like a separate small island that you go to, and you can use it to train your Sujimon. You can use it to get your Sujimon to plant different vegetables and stuff that you can then use to craft things. Or you can use it to get them to do workshops, which is basically earning you currency to then improve your island further. But you can convert any currency into dollars. So the currency you earn on Dondoko Island is actually specifically for that mode. But you can then convert that currency into cash to use in the main game. And I'm at the point now where every 15 to 20 in-game minutes, I'm making $10,000 to $20,000. And to put that in perspective, the most expensive items in the game are $140,000 at the most. So we're talking about, and I'm not even at the highest level. Like, when you get to the highest level island, you can actually get to the point where you'll do because the way it works, you invite these people to stay at your island, and they stay for 3 days, and as long as you protect them from pirates and you can give them gifts and everything like that, the higher their satisfaction, the more money they'll spend. And then they leave a tip at the end. But as you get better tourists, because you increase your island, basically, your level, they will spend more money, right? So at the moment, my island popularity is rank B or something, and it goes all the way up to rank S, right? So I am earning, like I said, 10 to 20,000 for every 3 in-game days, and each in-game day takes between 5 and 8 minutes, I would say. And yeah, I know that you can get to the point where every 3 in-game days you're earning 50,000, 60,000, and so you can earn money quite quickly from this mode. The one issue that some might find is to get to that point of earning the big money, it does require probably 10 hours of you putting time into this mode and actually getting the resources to build things, getting the right because as you capture things as well, it will improve the popularity of your island. So as you do certain tasks, your popularity will get higher, which will allow you to then unlock new areas of the island and invite more tourists, have more people stay, make even more money, right? So it does. It's more involved than the business management game in the previous mainline Like a Dragon. And that's either a good or bad thing, depending on how much content you want, right? Because in the previous Like a Dragon, you'd have that weird little business management game where these people were running across the screen. You'll remember, Jeff. And you got to the point with that where like every 10 to 15 minutes you'd make 3 million yen or whatever once you got to the top end of that. So you were making more money a lot more quickly. But I think the point of this is they want this to be a mode that you engage with almost like it's its own game. And that isn't a bad thing for me. I was playing through this mode and I didn't want to go back to the main story. Do you know what I mean? Not because the main story was bad, it's just that that's how much I was enjoying myself. And now that I've got to that point where I'm making an amount of money which is enough to see me through the game, and any time that I need more, I can go and spend like an hour or two just on this mode, and I'm back up to whatever I need, right? I've kind of gone back to the story, and I'm now in chapter 7. I just got to chapter 7 last night, and I have reached that point of the story where it's like, okay, now you've given me the hook. Now you've given me the thing where I cannot wait to see what happens next. And I will now be sort of mainlining the story a little bit more. But man, this game is so impressive. Like, I really don't know how they've done it. A friend of ours, MBZ, who has been on our previous podcast and everything, and he will be on this one eventually, he was saying, like, he's a big Pokemon guy. He used to play basically exclusively Pokemon for a very long time. And he said RGG Studios have made the best Pokemon game like in quite some time. And that's a sub mode in the game. Do you know what I mean? So and the same thing applies to the Dondoko Island situation. They have 3 very, very good games here. And I can't wait to just carry on playing. Like, I don't know if you've ever had this, Jeff. I'm sure you have. But the moment I realized how good this game was when I started to be thinking about the game even when I'm not playing it. And that doesn't happen very often, but when you get consumed by a game in that way, it kind of tells you that it's doing something right. So yeah, I'd highly recommend this to everybody, really. I think it is, for me, it's the first must-play game of the year. Do you have anything else, Jeff? Nice. Nice. Fantastic. And as I mentioned just now and earlier in the episode, I will now be reviewing Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth for us. As the game is already out, I'm not going to have that review out in like 2 or 3 days, because I still want to enjoy the game and be able to engage with as much of it as possible. But I would imagine that's going to come in the next sort of week to 2 weeks. So be looking out for that review as well from me. And yeah, I think we will. I think that's kind of it. I haven't played anything else. I don't think you've played anything else. Not that you can talk about anyway. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Like I said, we'll be back next week. We will also have a more kind of fun episode with less news, just because we're having to record one episode in advance. So please subscribe for that stuff. Also, if you would like us to do more topic-based things, and you have some topics you'd like us to talk about, please leave them in the comments, because we would love to hear what you want us to talk about, you know? Whether it be Deus Ex, right there. We just have oh my god. I think this should be a thing now. Jeff has like a collection of some of the best gaming things I've ever seen, and I feel like we should challenge him that every week he has to show us one of these amazing little things, because we can see Master Chief in the nice. But there we go. That's it for now. I've enjoyed this episode. I hope you have too. We will see you very soon. I hope you enjoyed last week's double header of episodes, which you had 2 episodes in 4 days. That won't be happening again. We apologize for that. And yeah, we will see you soon. Have a good time gaming, stay in the mix, and goodbye from me.